Hello, and welcome to It Matters How We Treat One Another, the social psychology show. I'm your host, Matthew David Vasco. If you subscribe to the show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform, then thank you. We are grateful for each and every one of our subscribers. This episode features an interview with Kelly Manning from American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We'll be discussing everything from where you can get help if you need help to how you can get involved if you are passionate about suicide prevention. But first, our inspiring news. If inspiring things are happening in your neck of the woods, like let's say you witnessed compassion in action, or you've been inspired by someone in your life, then please email me at M as in Matthew, D as in David, Vasco, that's VASKO, at gmail.com and let me know. This week's inspiring news comes in the form of an inspiring new book. My friend Dave Coor turned me on to a new book that he contributed a chapter to called Men's Work: Journeys of Strength, Compassion, and Transformation. I think Dave gave me a copy of the book because he knows me to be an advocate for compassion amongst other positive values. And he thought I would be into this new work that seeks to explore the changing roles of men in our modern society. And I am into this book. Dave's chapter is about how he was innately born a compassionate and sensitive person, and how this is a version of normal for men. It's okay to be male and sensitive and compassionate. Here's a quote from Dave's chapter. Quote, "Isn't that what a woman wants when searching for a life partner? Someone who is both strong yet sensitive. I think we've figured out the strong part. It's the vulnerability that needs serious work." End quote. And here's another powerful quote from the book's foreword by Robert Plagman. Quote, "As society redefines what it means to be a man, it opens the door to richer, more fulfilling lives for men and those they engage with, ultimately nurturing a culture of emotional intimacy and relational strength." End quote. And leading a richer, more fulfilling life is definitely inspiring news. Check out the new book, Men's Work, if you get the chance. It's available from Amazon.com, and it's worth a read if you're seeking positive new perspectives on manhood. Again, if you know of inspiring news happening in your area, please email me at mdvasco@gmail.com. Thanks. Up next is our feature segment, but first, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Some years ago, I was struggling with depression. I knew I was depressed, but I had a hard time asking for help. It seemed like a huge hurdle to figure out how to access therapy services, and the thought of opening up about my depression made me nervous. I eventually did get brave and sought help. Finally, starting therapy was such a relief because knowing I had a professional in my corner helped me start to feel better after even the first session. Thankfully, BetterHelp is on a mission to make starting therapy easier. Fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. All you need to do is click the link in the description to get started. And BetterHelp is offering fans of this show 10% off your first month of therapy. All you have to do is visit betterhelp.com/itmatters. That's betterhelp.com/itmatters. And now our feature segment, a quick content warning. This interview includes conversation about suicide. My guest today is Kelly Manning from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Kelly is the Special Events Manager for the Greater Los Angeles and Central Coast chapter. In this pivotal position, Kelly orchestrates the success of vital initiatives such as AFSP's signature Out of the Darkness walks. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to see you. Our annual connections that happen every year at our own walks. And here we are the day before. I'm really excited to be on your podcast today. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you. Yes, suicide prevention is definitely something that I am passionate about, and I do participate in the Out of the Darkness walks each year in Pasadena for the Greater Los Angeles Walk. And it's just a real pleasure to finally get you on the show and talk to you about all the important work that AFSP is doing.
Yes, again, thank you so much. It's important to keep the community connections available for anyone who is listening. We never really know who will touch. And so even just as simple as wearing a walk shirt, I found that someone who had a connection to suicide lost his dad, saw someone walking with a walk shirt and found out about our organization. So it's those connections to keep out in the communities throughout the year are very important.
I've had that kind of experience by wearing the walk shirts myself, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Let me just dive right into the interview here. How did you, Kelly, become involved in the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention?
Well, I live in the Pasadena area, and I had always been a volunteer for my children when they were in school. I had a connection to someone that was bringing a walk into Pasadena for the first time through AFSP. And I use the word connection because although I had a connection to a staff member of AFSP, I had no knowledge of AFSP. I have no connection to suicide loss. I had no connection to personal struggle. So I started 10 years ago, 11 years ago tomorrow, setting up tables and chairs in Pasadena for our first walk that the chapter brought into the local San Gabriel Valley area. So
Fantastic.
that's
And
how I got involved in AFSP from that first day. I felt that I found a place that gave importance to our community, the impact, and I discovered my personal why not having a loss and not having a struggle was something that was so surprising to people because
mm,
they just assumed that I would only be involved in suicide prevention if I had that direct connection. And that changed my life because I felt that everyone should feel that they can be involved in suicide prevention and shouldn't have that loss. We it's the only way that we can actually start, really helping to save lives is if we all get involved, even without a connection ourselves. We all have mental health. We all need to have those honest conversations, not only with others, but with ourselves. And breaking the stigma, normalizing the language of suicide prevention and mental health in our communities is critical.
that's so important what you say about
Mhm.
normalizing the conversation,
Mhm.
because I know one of AFSP's signature programs is called Talk Saves Lives.
Mhm.
And I've attended one of those uh, presentations before, and I was, just so impressed. So, I mean, it made an impression on me, is what I'm trying to say. How, uh, talking about mental health can help us return to our power, right? That somehow, um, maybe the dark thoughts we have seem less powerful when we're open about those feelings with other people.
Or or more possible to have those conversations to talk into the light because
Mhm.
it's it's available to us. It's no longer a stigma if you have a conversation even with a stranger or especially with a family member, and they welcome those hard conversations, those honest, dark conversations to come through. That's how you step into the light, because you have the opportunity and, as you say, the power to share your voice, where as much as you know sometimes that it's okay to talk about it, you still need others there to let you know that you're not alone.
So true.
Mhm.
Well said. What are some of the things that AFSP does?
Well, we are a national organization that was founded in 1987 in New York. And over the past 20 years, as you mentioned, we created the Out of the Darkness walks that are our signature fundraising and our signature impact experience that takes place with AFSP, because those walks offer the knowledge and the opportunity of what we're all about, of what our mission represents, which is saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide. By attending these events, you can learn about the work that AFSP does, both at a local level within our own chapter, as well as on a state and a national level. And some of those things, when I mentioned state and national level, advocacy is a very large part of AFSP's mission. We attend state capitol in each state. For us, it's in March, and we speak to representatives. We share our conversations. We share our personal whys and our connection to the cause. And we support the initiatives and the bills that are coming through or that have been recently passed, and acknowledging the impact that those initiatives within our communities make and how vital they are to sustain them in areas where it's not a one and done. You know, we carry
Mhm.
our mental health 365 days a year, and so does everybody else in the world. And so it's not just one bill and one, vote that makes it happen. It's a journey that needs to be sustained. And that's a really important message right now that we're learning through advocacy with 988,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of cost involved in being able to support a 3-digit 24-hour suicide prevention hotline number. And fortunately for us that live in California, we have a lot of support for that within our local communities. But there are areas in the country that are struggling with finding the funding to continue to support a 3-digit 24-hour hotline.
Oh, wow.
And we don't want to go back. We
Mhm.
just need to have that support. It is saving lives, and it's a great opportunity for people to connect and have conversations. So the advocacy work is there. The education training, you mentioned our Talk Saves Lives. That education training after COVID allowed us to then be virtual. We never had any virtual experiences within AFSP, as many organizations didn't. And now that obviously we can go back into person spaces, just the opportunity to connect with a lot larger, group of individuals by virtual access gives the awareness and the education training that these programs offer with Talk Saves Lives. It's real for college students, more than sad for middle school and high school age students. And then some other programs that are focused on the cultural differences within our communities. We have a Talk Saves Lives for Latinx. We have a Let's Save Lives for the Black communities, because they bring in the cultural information and resources that are very impactful to all of us within our own space. We want to see and hear the voices and the faces of our own individual experiences and communities to
Mhm.
help us break that stigma, to help break that silence and start talking. So it's a really important impact that we've recently been developing within our national programming.
That's so interesting what you say about the national 988 number now. I know that's something that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention advocated for.
Mhm.
And so I just love the fact that AFSP is now helping communities support the 988 number and really ensure that there's someone there when people call that number, because that seemed like such an significant change to me when that happened, to switch to a three-digit number. It to me it said mental health is as important as physical health, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
that there's a three-digit number you can call to get mental health support separate from 911, right?
Hmm.
And that we understand that it's a different kind of need, yet just as vital as 911.
Right. And that's what they found for so many years with talking to people who had had a mental health crisis and had to have the experience of only being able to contact 911 if there was, a serious risk to life. We always had a 7-digit number. The first 7-digit 24-hour hotline number for mental health originated here in Los Angeles through Dee Dee Hirsch
Oh,
in the 70s. And Dee Dee Hirsch is actually the organization within our LA, greater LA area that supports our current 988 networking.
I
And
see.
AFSP, to clarify, AFSP does not directly work with or on a 988 suicide prevention hotline or any hotline of any kind. We support and partner with the organizations that do, and we advocate for the sustainability as we advocated for for the actual development and passing of the laws to allow for a 988 three-digit number. Because even myself, I never wanted to say the 7-digit unless I had it in front of me. I
Mm,
can remember 988, and we hope so can many. But the other importance is it isn't a physical medical need, and we need the mental health professionals that have the experience in de-escalating crisis and understanding where that line is of the need to bring in someone for critical threat of life versus having those honest conversations that some people can't have in the communities that they live in, and talking to someone that is anonymous, because these calls are anonymous unless there is a crisis intervention that's needed. um, that can really help someone de-escalate in the moment that they're at,
mm,
and at that time
mm,
all it takes is time to put between the individual that is considering taking their life and the act of the actual loss of life. Time is what really is needed and is vital to keep these people with us for another day.
right. And I think this is a good time to mention the statistic that if people have had a suicide attempt and then later talked about that experience, they often will relate that they immediately regretted their choice, that they immediately realized this was a mistake to try to take their own life, that they regret that decision, that people, given time, given space, given the opportunity to get out of that dark place they're in, always decide that they want to live. That was something I learned from AFSP, from coming to the walks, that statistic that when people are interviewed after the fact, that uh, to a person, they wished they had chosen never to have attempted to take their own life to begin with, you know. Um, and I think that that's a powerful thing we can say in the world of suicide prevention is, this is not something that given time and space, this is always something people, you know, wish they'd have made a different choice, wish they would have chosen to seek help, you know, and that those who do get help are glad they got it, you know. Um, so what if someone we care about is in crisis? What can we do?
Well, it's it's always recommended that if you want to, and again, we can't ever insist that somebody, step in and support someone that they believe is struggling. But if you want to be involved and supportive of an individual, whether you have someone in your life right now that's having experience with a mental health struggle, or you just, as a human, want to have that knowledge to be aware, it's always best to learn the signs because it's not just one single reason that somebody most often makes a decision to end their life. It's usually multiple factors that are involved. And we can never say it's always the same, but we can never say people always wish that they hadn't have done what they did. But those factors exist on so many levels that each identifier has an additional risk factor to the concern that somebody might move forward and want to end their life. And so, what leads to those factors? There's environmental, there's genetics in some cases where there's a family of mental health struggle throughout, generational struggle.
Mhm.
The historical factors involved, the environmental factors about, there are access to lethal means, which having access to lethal means, that is the most critical risk for
Mhm.
someone who is struggling with their mental health. And it's the easiest thing often that anyone can do within their own households, within their own community spaces, or their own family conversations is to have that real conversation to remove means
Mhm.
if there's a risk. And it's a temporary move. We're not saying, remove permanently, but the reason why we have those blister packs, they call them, where you have to push out the pills
Uh-huh.
on some prescriptions, is based on that time needed that gives more time in the process of trying to have access to lethal means for prescriptives. The locks, those things are generated to create time. And removing firearms, removing lethal means of any kind from a household is a way that you can help in a situation that might be happening within that environment, or there's a concern that there might be a future risk. Um, the physical and mental state of the individual, do they have financial struggles? Are they showing signs of change where they were the life of the party and now they don't go out? They reject every invitation. There's a lot of signs that are out there. So as you mentioned, Talk Saves Lives, there's a lot of other organizations and online where they have an easy Google search to look for the signs, to find out how to help someone and know what to be looking for yourself when having conversations with individuals. So that's a very important thing to understand. And you can then always tell somebody to call 988, and you can call 988 for someone else.
Uh-huh.
You do not have to be the individual that's calling for themselves. If I had a friend and I didn't know how to talk to them, or to be honest, I couldn't take that burden myself because I was going through my own struggle, but I wanted to get them help. I just couldn't be there to walk that path with them. You could call 988 and explain that too. I struggle myself. How can I help this individual, give them resources to get help without me being the one to be, you know, side by side with them. So those are questions that can be asked through 988.
Very good. So that brings me to my next question, actually, which is what can a person expect um, if they call 988 or text the suicide crisis lifeline? Uh, Kind of how can we expect that to sort of play out?
Mhm.
Uh, for example, I read somewhere, and I thought this was important to mention, just because you call 988 doesn't mean someone's going to appear at your door, right? Because that might discourage someone from calling if they worry that now if I call 988, there's going to be someone at my door right away, right?
Mhm.
So
Sure.
I wanted to use this platform to say, if you call 988, you're going to have a conversation with someone and it could lead different directions, but it does not necessarily mean there's going to be an ambulance pulling up in front of your house, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's what we know, that's what 911 is for. Okay. 911 should be having ambulances pull up in front of your house, but that whole de-escalation of a mental health crisis is why 988 is so important. And the messaging about 988, it's been available to us now for 2 years. And it is anonymous. I mentioned earlier, it is anonymous unless there is critical threat to life. And the individuals have been extensively trained who are taking these calls. I will say that just like any consumer phone call you make, some days you get somebody good, some days you get somebody bad. Hang up and
Mhm.
call back, because we can Google it ourselves and we can all see that some people have inferior experiences on 988. And then
Mm.
I've had mothers come up to us when we're tabling in the community saying, "Thank you so much. 988 saved my son's life."
Oh,
So everyone has different experiences. We can never be able to share the outcome is always, X versus Z, but um, it is anonymous unless there's a concern for risk. They're not going to be coming to your door because it is anonymous. That is very common for a lot of people to be fearful of that. They've had a lot of negative experiences. Some people have had police intervention. There is not police intervention, again, unless there is a risk to life. These are conversations with mental health professionals and volunteers that have been highly trained in how to have conversations with mental health. It's there to have the call and the talk, to talk away the dark. It's
mm.
there to be on the other side of the line, to let someone know they're not alone. It's there to provide resources within the areas they live. And yet, I'm also told, and I don't know, I can speak for the whole country on this, but 988 doesn't have access to your geo. So, again, they couldn't come to your door if they wanted to. They know you're calling in a region, but they don't have your street address. 911 does, but 988 does not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, and there's also opportunities, and I know this was a struggle too. They have lines for veterans, and so we have veterans and then active military that are fearful of calling because they're fearful for the retribution that might take place. But it is anonymous,
Mm.
so we're unaffiliated with their organizations and you know, their their professional life that they work in. It's a private conversation that's taking place. It's not being shared with, employers and with organizations that people are involved with unless there's threat to life.
Got it. Suppose I'm with someone and we're in the same physical location, right? We're maybe I'm at their apartment or something and we're having a conversation and they start to open up to me that they're struggling, right? Um, Now suppose they're in crisis and I'm concerned about them and I don't quite know what to do. Could I pick up the phone and call 988 on their behalf? And maybe the three of us, me and that person that I care about, and a 988 operator could have a conversation together or something? Is that possible? How does that work?
Well, again, I'm not 988. But I know because I do often, work closely with Dee Dee Hirsch, and um, I know for a fact that we as a community are able to call for someone else. And you absolutely should call, because one of the other things that's important in understanding what you can do and the actions to take if someone is having a mental health crisis is that you stay with them.
Okay.
And so, as you described, my answer would be, again, I'm not even a mental health professional, but my answer would be, from everything I've learned, is that you absolutely want to stay with them if you can. Again, you have to be mindful of your own self care as well. But if you can stay with them, there's, and there's means involved, you immediately remove the means so they don't have access to it. And you immediately call 988. It's best if you could get them to do the call, because that gives you the knowledge that where they're at, right? So you tell them, let's call 988. I'll dial it for you. Here, you hand them the phone. If they absolutely don't want to have that conversation, you can still have that conversation with them in the room and say, hey, I'm with someone and this just happened. And although they don't want to call, do you have any advice that I can share right now? You can have those conversations. Just again, like with somebody, you might call five people, you might have a little bit different vibe from each individual that answers the call on the other end at the 988 center. But I've been told by many individuals, and I see it in writing, that you are allowed to call 988 on behalf of someone else.
Okay.
And if somebody were to tell you otherwise, you could say, thank you very much. And you pick up and you dial it again, because that, I talk to a lot of people. I'm out in the community with community outreach, which again is another important aspect with AFSP, making those connections where we don't even know there's a need. But I did have someone that shared that they had an inferior experience with 988. And again, I'm not advocating in any way, is biased, because we're not even involved directly in it, but
Uh,
it is saving lives. And if there was a bad experience, it's really unfortunate. This individual, I heard, was able to call their school counselor, and that school counselor talked to them for 45 minutes and gave time that that student needed
oh,
because
wow.
of the moment that they were at. And so they did the right thing in reaching out to someone else. But I would always say, just please don't. It's hard to say don't be discouraged, because it's one of the hardest things I hear to do, to have to call 988 for some people.
Right.
But the fact that they did it is a really important message that they have to remind themselves of. They still have hope and they
Right.
still want to live.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier about, they always say that they wish they had never done it. I don't use that description when I refer to people who have made attempts, because I can't begin to speak on their behalf, because I've not experienced that struggle myself. But what I do hear so often is that someone says they don't want to die, but the pain is too much to live through.
Mm.
And so that's where hope and healing and conversation and support is so critical within our communities. And I always say this when I'm in the community: you might not be in the community that is supporting you. There are other communities you can find in your life that will give you the support and the healing and the understanding that can bring you hope.
Yeah. I think I sort of want to reiterate one thing that you've said a couple of times now, which is that you don't get to pick who you talk to when you dial 988, right? And maybe that person who picks up the phone isn't the perfect match for you. So it is okay to hang up and call back and get someone different. And maybe that'll be a better fit.
Yeah.
And you'll have that life-saving conversation that you need. I think that bears repeating because when someone's in crisis, to have a bad experience on 988 is definitely not what they need, right?
No.
right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Mhm.
And my last question is about people like you, right? Like, what should someone do if they're passionate about suicide prevention and they want to get involved, if they want to do something themselves?
Well, we all love Google. You can Google. I hear a lot of people that discovered AFSP because they did the research. And and that's important. As an individual who volunteered with AFSP for 10 years myself, joined the board, and in my board role for 6 years, led as a chapter chair for our volunteer recruitment and our community outreach. I've talked to a lot of individuals, and that's what gives me light and why I continue to do the work I'm doing. And now giving up a job of 33 years in the public sector to be, working in the passion that I get and the support and hope I get in those conversations
Mhm.
is what gives me life. And the fact that somebody is doing the research to decide which mental health organization they want to work for, it's all about our mindfulness. And even though we want to get involved to give to others, we always have to be most mindful of our own wellness. And, we always hear you have to care for yourself before you can care for someone else.
Right.
And so with AFSP, that's such an important message. We want the individuals to feel safe. We want them to feel supported. We want them to feel that they have guidance, but that they also have the opportunities to make connections themselves in our volunteering community spaces. But number one is the mindfulness to their own wellness. If it's someone that's had a recent loss, we want to be mindful to them on that. Going out in the public, we never know who we're going to talk to. If it's someone who has a struggle, we still welcome you to get involved in volunteering, but we just want to make sure that you are in a space that is supported by others and that can offer you what you need in your life to move forward with another day. So get involved, do the research, contact AFSP, afsp.org/LA will get you the opportunity to learn more about our chapter. We have a volunteer form you can fill out. You can volunteer 1 day a year, or you can volunteer as many days as we have available to you. There's no commitment of time and space in volunteering with AFSP, but it's an opportunity that we get so much from because the volunteers are at the heart of our organization and we don't live in every community. So we want to know what is needed and what is happening and what the opportunities are within the neighborhoods of our chapter. And that's why we need so many volunteers. So we welcome anyone to join us.
Fantastic. Thank you. And now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And I see you smiling. You know it's
I know,
coming.
I like this part.
So we always like to end on a high note. And I always like to do a rapid fire feel good five at the end of every interview, just to hear what our guests have to say on these different feel good topics. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, excellent. Here we go. What is your favorite feel good song?
Love Shack by the B-52s.
Oh, wonderful. What is your favorite feel-good movie or TV show?
Joe Wright's Pride and Prejudice. It's a classic for myself and my daughters, and we can quote every word. And I saw a clip of it, and I can't wait for Sunday morning after my walk. I'm going to be watching it again. So, yep, that's it.
Excellent.
I'm a hopeless romantic.
Love it. What helps lift you up when you're feeling down?
Having a conversation with a friend, a family member, or even someone I've never met before.
Wonderful. What gives you, pardon me, what gives your life meaning?
Well, I'd say the obvious is my family, but to be honest, it's my cats. I love my cats. We had an amazing puppy for 17 and a half years that we just lost. So My animals are my spirit support and my love, my husband, my children, my daughters, my friends,
Wonderful.
people. People gives me meaning.
And what inspires you?
The conversations that I have with people, even through their sadness and their loss and their journey, I look for the light. I look to give support. I I look to entrust in conversations that can be sacred to both of us. And those journeys not only I hope give someone else support, but they bring me more support than I ever would have imagined 11 years ago before I found AFSP.
Wonderful. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for sharing all this vital information with us and helping us really understand the kind of work that AFSP is doing in the world. And I want to say for myself that it feels good just to be spreading that name, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, because I myself did not know about the organization until my friend Susan turned me on to it. So
Mhm.
thank you for helping us spread that word.
Yes, no, and AFSP brought me to you
Wonderful.
and to Susan and the team and to the Pasadena experience that we have every year. So yes, thank you. If
Thank you.
anybody's listening, join us on the first, or join us tomorrow on the second, and every year the first Saturday of November in Central Park, Pasadena.
Wonderful. Thanks so
Thanks
much.
again.
This brings us to the end of this episode of It Matters How We Treat One Another. Thank you to our guest, Kelly Manning of American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Learn more at afsp.org. Please subscribe to keep up with all our episodes, and you can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/itmatterspatrons. Thank you to our very first patron, Delphine18. Or you can support the show by shopping our Etsy store at etsy.com/shop/itmattersmerch. There are links in the description. Your quote of the week is, quote, "Life must be lived and curiosity kept alive. One must never, for whatever reason, turn their back on life." That is from Eleanor Roosevelt. And remember, treat everyone with kindness, respect, empathy, and compassion, and try for love and acceptance whenever possible. Be well, and much love to you all.